Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today I want to talk about a new Terramaster, but more precisely I want to talk about this. This is the Terramaster D8-332. It is a Thunderbolt 3 RAID enabled 8-bay enclosure. Now, if you're not interested in direct attached storage or DAS and you follow this channel predominantly for network attached storage, then this may not be for you. But I think right now, in the last chapter, if you will, of 2022, it has to be said that for those of you that have been looking at Thunderbolt enabled RAID storage, the choices are getting thinner and thinner, and this video is part of a 3-part series very specifically about this device. But then on top of that, I'm also going to be doing a general overview in a video coming up soon on the state of RAID supported devices in Thunderbolt, because there are so many reasons why right now it is incredibly hard to get your hands on the right kind of Thunderbolt 3 RAID storage. And right now, in terms of price, in terms of capabilities, and in terms of availability, Terramaster are absolutely coining it. Now, the Terramaster D8-332, but I'm just going to keep calling it the D8 for the rest of this video, utilises that new kind of hybrid rack mount desktop chassis that we've talked about there in the past in a lot of the 2022 and 2023 releases from Terramaster. The D8 is a vertical stack tower system, and it retails, depending on where you are in the world, if you're in America, for about $1,299, in the UK £1,199, and in Greater Europe, we'll focus straight on Germany there, again $1,299. The system itself is built on a hardware RAID architecture internally. It manages the RAID itself. You don't have to rely on software RAID, where you have to utilize your host PC or Mac system to create the RAID, support the RAID, and have the potential problem of accidental disconnections, critical power failures, or RAID software running that can have a failure and possibly destabilize your RAID. That's why a lot of users who want a large amount of storage but also want performance go for external RAID systems, because the overhead in running the RAID is taken away from your PC or Mac, which can be quite debilitating to the read and write operations, particularly if you're also using the destination RAID system for editing and things like Photoshop and Elements and stuff like that, where you're also utilizing the hardware resources and the bandwidth back and forth at the same time that the system is managing the RAID. So external hardware RAID is really, really important. Now, with this system, it supports all of the RAIDs you like: RAID 1, 0, 5, 6, and 10. Now, why is that important? Because right now, in 2022 to 2023, a hardware RAID system like this in 8-bay that doesn't force you to get the drives as well is actually a lot harder than you think. Right now, if you are looking at substantially scaled RAID storage systems that are RAID 5, RAID 6, or RAID 10 enabled, your choices are the following. You can go for a Terramaster, you can go for an OWC. But after that, you've got hardly any options. You've got going for unbranded and repurposed chassis from companies like Netstore or Highpoint, which is one chassis that's diversified amongst many, many different providers, which again, very low, I think it's 1-year warranty, poor availability, and very slow delivery times. Then you can look at companies that are well respected in the current market of that, the Eastern market, but again, availability is poor, such as Eureka and the 8050 series. But then after that, you have to make your way into the branded things, your Lacey, your G-Tech, that kind of stuff, or G-Technology. SanDisk, Seagate, and WD, and these are pre-populated. You have no choice of the media that's inside, and often their price tags, because they include the media, are substantial and fully populated, whereas some users like to have the flexibility of choosing the hard drives or SSDs for their system, which is something this provides. On top of that, being a hardware RAID system, it means you can create your own individual RAIDs, which we'll touch on later on in the hardware review. But for now, let's open this bad boy up, shall we? Have a look inside. Again, big old retail box here. To get this off the table, we have got our box of accessories. So inside, what do we get? We've got an external mains cable there. This has got an internal PSU, a 250 watt PSU. We've also got a decent length USB-C Thunderbolt 3 cable. I believe this might even be a 3-meter cable. So again, very rare to get such a high quality and high length cable with an enclosure these days, when normally they chuck in a 0.5 or maybe a meter if you're lucky. We've also got the screwdriver. Terramaster always seems to include the screwdriver. You've got the rubberized feet. These may be spares, but we'll check when we get it installed. And we've got the screws there for 2.5 inch and 3.5 inch media there for inside. We've also got details on the 2 years manufacturer's warranty and first time installation guides for the tools that you download. The system, when you install it for the first time, will install its own drivers over Thunderbolt, but you can download the RAID Manager Pro software as well to create one or multiple RAIDs, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. Although I will highlight, as I said in the intro, that in this video I'm focusing on the hardware, and we have a full dedicated video coming soon where we are going to look at that RAID Manager and performance. But that's it for our accessories. We've got a huge foam panel, so again, huge amount of protection there in transit. Always respect that. More foam. And finally, the unit itself. Again, another whole layer of foam there at the bottom, so a huge amount of protection for this device when it's making its way to you from the east. Now, if we remove that from there, you'll see what I mean about this vertical chassis being a hybrid rack mount and desktop design there. Having a look at it, that is a very unique chassis. The more astute of you, and let's face it, you've got to have eyes, will also notice two big handles there at the top. It's a portable device, and again, Thunderbolt DASs seem to be one of a very small number of devices that you see in the market that arrive with handles. Why is that? Because a lot of users who are particularly editing raw footage or on-site editing, where production of recorded footage is happening in parallel to the stuff actually being done, portability is actually quite important, and this device in its metal external chassis there, two very sturdy handles on the top, I can see a lot of people loading this in and out of production trucks quite conveniently. So let's have a look at it. As mentioned, this isn't a NAS, it is a DAS enclosure with an absolute ton of ventilation all the way around it. And again, the front panel there, we've got ventilation for every single one of those click and load bays, which I'll show you in a moment, and a big ventilation panel there at the base, power button at the top. And again, you do not need to fully populate this. If you choose to, you can go ahead and run it on a single drive if you want, which would be weird. But what you can do is remove one of those trays. As you can see, big old metal trays there. And again, you can take our drive. In this case, we could look at maybe a 4.2 EWD red. You can pop it inside there, and the drive is installed. And again, you can screw it in for additional screw and security there, but because of these trays having those little clips on the inside, the tray is held in place. We can go ahead and install that tray like so. Again, I do recommend that you screw it in, but it's the idea that we don't have to that is key. But let's have a little look at that tray again. It's a metal tray all the way around in a metal enclosure with metal internals. What does that mean, ladies and gentlemen? It means this is not going to be a quiet operating machine. It's already got an active cooling system I'll show you in just a moment, but a fully metal internal and external design. This is not going to be the quietest system in the market right now, and that's something you're going to have to be aware of. Whether you are putting OneDrive in this or putting several drives in and then using the RAID Manager software to create a RAID and then creating multiple individual pulls, whatever way you look at it, you are going to look at a system that is going to be making noise during its operation, whether you use hard drives or SSD because of the chassis design. Now, to carry on the subject of media, it's also worth touching on that this system supports the very latest hard drives. So right now in the studio, I've got the 22 TB WD Red Pro drives here. This supports it, which means in this system, that is an enormous amount of storage with 8 bays of storage available with up to 22 TBs. You can hear my voice echoing off the metal while I'm talking there. Now, other members of you may have noticed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bays. Unfortunately, one of these bays does not link to a SATA port. For some reason, they decided to not go with a SATA 9 bay. They went for the 8 bay there, presumably because of the chipset of the controller inside. Now inside, it's a dual controller array there with a Marvell and an Intel processor. Looking at my notes, it's the Intel JHL7440 and the Marvell A8SE9485 RAID controllers inside there for the software and the running of this device, because it's not just standalone RAID storage inside there. If we look at the rear of the device, we're able to see that there's more than just a Thunderbolt connection there. If we bring it closer to camera, you can see there, obviously as we expect, there is a couple of USB Type-C Thunderbolt ports there. One you can directly interface with, but also this device has an enormous amount of daisy chaining support. It can support up to another 6 Thunderbolt devices via there, and more precisely 6 more of these, which makes your storage hugely expandable. And again, you can attach just a single Thunderbolt cable to a PC or Mac system and the right RAID software and really have access to all of that storage very, very easily. But that's not it. We've also got a USB 3.1 port there that allows you to attach additional storage into that chain of storage devices, thereby creating a kind of docking station device here that allows you to add more Thunderbolt storage in devices as well as USB storage as well to take advantage of. And there's even a DisplayPort 1.4, which means attaching 4K displays as well on this. All of those connected into this device, and this device connecting via one single cable to your Mac or Windows system with an enormous amount of storage open to you. Yes, it's gonna get noisy in this, but when it comes to high-powered archival storage and particularly editing storage, that although SSDs are faster, you're still going to be limited by sheer capacity and pricing. Large RAID-enabled enclosures like this are always going to be popular. Now, again, you've got 3 cooling fans in here, which will maintain the temperature of the system, will monitor the internal temperature and increase and decrease as appropriate, but it's still going to be noisy with 3 fans in that metal chassis there. Now, in terms of performance, we will be doing that software and performance video after this one, but Terramaster state that in a RAID 5 configuration with 4 TB drives of standard Pro Series 4 TB drives, this system achieved 1,440 megabytes per second, and in a RAID 0 configuration with hard drives, 1,600 megabytes per second. No mention of SSDs there in the right amount of RAID storage being put together there, but again, it's going to be higher than that. Just because you hear Thunderbolt was 40 gigabits per second, you still need to have the right amount of hardware inside to reach that point. But more appropriately, imagine that 40 gigabits per second or 4,000 megabytes per second bandwidth between your PC, Mac and this, also including daisy chain devices, also including USB devices, also including a display device there as well. All of that being funneled by that 40 gigabits per second. There's a huge amount of potential to be talking about there. Now, I said I wouldn't talk too much in terms of software, because that's going to be in its own dedicated video soon. But what I will highlight for this device is the RAID Manager Pro software that's included with it does give you a tremendous amount of flexibility. There's actually a separate driver and the software included with the device and linked to in the software 3D barcodes that I mentioned inside there. But inside that, you have got hot swap enabled on this device that allows you to eject and introduce drives to increase the RAID as appropriate and replace drives that may have failed. On top of that, you've got auto rebuild settings there that you can have where if you have a RAID failure and you can see which drive has failed due to the LED system built on the front, what you can do is then immediately introduce a new drive, and if you have enabled auto rebuild settings during the creation of that RAID, the system will automatically repair that RAID as soon as the new drive is introduced. On top of that, you've got online RAID migration, online RAID expansion, all of that built into this device to allow you to be quite flexible with your RAID, as well as moving it to other devices and create separate RAID pools for you to take advantages, all via that single connection there. It's still a one-person interface. This is not Thunderbolt NAS or NAS Thunderbolt over IP, but it's a one-to-one plug-and-play Thunderbolt solution. There's a lot to be said for it. And now we've got to address a certain elephant in the room. These guys, for a long time, when it came to a RAID-enabled Thunderbolt storage that wasn't populated and allowed the user to the flexibility and what they wanted to go for in a Mac editing, world. These guys were kind of the kings. And unfortunately, since Drobo here went into bankruptcy, there has been an enormous emptiness in the field of Thunderbolt RAID storage that no one brand has really occupied really fully. Now, right now, when it comes to getting an unpopulated RAID enabled, and that's hardware RAID on board, so RAID 5, RAID 6, RAID 10 enclosure, so no drives inside, that's still reasonably priced, available with a good brand and warranty supported it comes down to these guys and OWC. There are other brands out there, of course. QNAP tried to do a DAS, but it never arrived. The TR106 108CT, that never arrived. Brand have introduced a number of Thunderbolt RAID enclosures, but they're all NVMe SSD. These guys are out of the racket. Seagate and WD utilize their own SanDisk and Lacey brands in front of them, and of course all of the Eastern brands that we've not talked about. But right now, it comes down to these guys and OWC. And right now, this enclosure for me ticks a lot of boxes. What do I like? I like the build quality. I like the scope of storage. I like the flexibility. I like the fact that it's got the software included and that dual RAID SoC architecture inside. I like the software that it utilizes, and again, you will see it for yourself very, very soon. I like the fact that it is kind of like a docking station capabilities, and that daisy chaining support being as good as it is. What do I not like? Well, it's going to be a bit noisy. There's no avoiding that. This whole metal architecture is going to make some noise, and some of you might not like the idea of there being handles on the top there, and kind of wish they could get rid of those because it looks a bit naff otherwise. Also, and I didn't really touch on this earlier in the video, but the Terramaster RAID series of devices in TOS 5 has a flexible RAID system where you can mix and match drives. Unfortunately, the DAS version doesn't have that flexible RAID system known as T-RAID. However, Drobo, one of the reasons they were so popular and why it's a shame for many users that they're no longer around is they had that flexible drive RAID system known as Beyond RAID, and you could use any drives you wanted to and it would get the best performance and capacity available while still maintaining that RAID redundancy. Now maybe Terramaster can work on getting their T-RAID flexible RAID system inside their RAID devices. If they can do that, that's the edge I think it will give them over OWC. And overall, right now, in terms of RAID storage, and particularly in 8 bays, this is the score to beat for me. I think it's a very good enclosure, and I find it very hard to find fault with it. If I have to find fault, again, it's noise. It's that lack of a flexible RAID configuration. So right now, I'm going to be setting this device up to create several RAID pools. I'm going to be going through the software in a future video, coming very, very soon, along with a few performance tests there to give you some idea about how you can interact with this device, create your RAID configuration, and basically get the most of your Terramaster RAID storage there. And do stay tuned to that video coming soon. We took a broader look at the subject of Thunderbolt RAID storage in 2022-2023 and help you buy the right RAID solution and get it right first time. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Click like if you've enjoyed the video and subscribe if you want to learn more. Use the free advice section and Ask NAS Compares forum if you need help choosing the right solution for you, manned by me and Eddie the web guy and the community at large. And of course, there should be a link in the description to the full written review for this box below as well. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.